Folklore Founders. Thank you so much for joining me once again here on my channel. I know, it's been a long time since my last one. But I've got some time on my hands now, so what better way to fill that time than to bring you some folklore hidden just below the surface. We are in the beautiful village of Stoney, Stanton in Leicestershire. Now this is a typical large Leicestershire village, famous for its quarries and its diving centre, and for the church, which you'll see I've just walked around. The church itself, it dates back to the 12th century. They reckon it was here before that time, Norman church, but the stone church was started to be built in the 12th century. A lot of it is 200-300 years old. Beautiful church. I'll try and put a link in the description below where you can find out more information about the church, because that's not what I'm here for today. I'm not here for the church, as beautiful as that church is. No, I'm here to look for two things. I'm here to look for fairies and phantoms. So let's go for a walk, see the sights of Stoney Stanton, and I'll explain more as we go. Oh, and don't forget to like, comment, ding the bell notification, subscribe, all of that jazz. A subscribe click is free to you but means a lot to me. That'd be really great. Let's go for a walk, see what we can find. The phantom that was reported. It is said there was a bridge called Scholar's Bridge between Sapcote and Stoney Stanton, and the people from Sapcote would quite often come up to Stoney Stanton and vice versa using the bridge, a Scholar's Bridge. Not quite sure where it got its name from, though there was a scholar, a gentleman who gained his degree at Cambridge and came and gave Stoney Stanton some 50 years of his life, acted as the ward of the church. So it could be that. The bridge was a small culvert, stone bridge, and people would often report strange goings on and sightings of phantoms and ghosts. Now, back then, 1700s, 1800s, it wasn't so much tied to the location. Spirits weren't tied to locations like we associate now, so they believed it could have been a phantom, a spirit from elsewhere. And there is a very interesting report dated 1806 from a very learned mathematician who says this: a friend, who is no wise to be superstitious, relates the following circumstances, which happened to himself at this bridge. I was, says he, walking between Stoney Stanton and Sapcote one very fine night, in the autumn of 1806, between the hours of 11 and 12, my mind anxiously engaged upon a problem in mathematics, In the middle of the meadow adjoining Scholar's Bridge, and at the distance of about 80 to 90 yards from the bridge, I heard suddenly a groaning sort of noise, which I could not at that time account for. The foolish old woman's tale I had so frequently heard about, the ghost of Scholar's Bridge, rushed instantaneously into my mind, and I was in some measure prepared for the extraordinary circumstances that followed. The night was fine, but rather dark, so that I could distinguish objects at the distance of only a few feet, and had got across the meadow as far as the stile, which stands close to the bridge, before I saw any object whatever. This stile stands upon ground raised somewhat above the level of the meadow, and the stone step is placed for the ease of passengers in getting over. Just as I had set my left foot upon the stone, and in the act of throwing my right leg over the stile, an animal, apparently larger than a fox, and which I supposed to be a shagged dog, brushed by my right shoulder with a surprising velocity. The darkness of the night prevented me from seeing the animal before its spring over the stile, and I never saw it but only its descent to the ground after touching my shoulder, and I verily believe it was a fox or a dog. But, meeting with it in the middle of the night, upon the wing as it were, for I never saw it on the ground, in the very place where so many people had been frightened, I was very much startled at first, and the animal seemed to be as much frightened as myself. Was it a shag dog? There are reports of a shag dog in Leicestershire, but that's up on the river Soar. You can find out more about that story in my book Leicestershire Folktales for Children. There's an account of that story in there. There's shag dogs all over the country. You've got the famous Black Shuck in Norfolk. Was it a black dog? Was it a ghost? Was it just a bird flying past his ear hole, or a bat buzzing him? We do not know. But Scholar's Bridge was here, so therefore, was there a phantom? That bit of folklore, you've got to make up your own mind. Well, you can't really come to Stoney Stanton without a visit to the world famous diving centre here at Stoney Cove. Once a quarry, now flooded with spring water, which gives it the crystal clear appearance you can see. Fantastic for outdoor swimming. There you are, look. You have to book to come, and you have to be a good swimmer because the water is cold, but I do want to do it one day. It looks great. And on a day like this, how could you not want to get in that water and swim? It is glorious. Look at that. And as for the Faeries, well, they just over there. So we're going to go for a wander out of here and try and find where these fairies really are. Let's go.
Listen, child, how your voice making these sounds where they tumble as mountain and stone. Rage has a way of unleashing your soul. These hands do not hold the strings that dance you. You're holding tight.
There's not much known about the Stoney Stanton Faeries. There is a report written end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century. A short report by a gentleman saying that there were many stories told, traditional stories told, by the folk of Stoney Stanton. There it is behind me. About the folk that live up here on this hill. And these folk were the Fae folk, the fairy people. Fairies, goblins, hobs, brownies, elves, about how they would dance and have parties. And being up here, you can see it is a magical place with views all around. And I'm sure 200-300 years ago this was extremely wooded as well. There are reports of fairy rings of mushrooms, which we now know are just the way mushrooms spread their spores, but still magical to see. And the people believed that the fairies would dance, party and laugh and be jolly within those circles. Trouble is, he didn't record any of these stories. He didn't write them down. There were no known stories left. Just this snippet that he wrote. John Nichols, in the History and Antiquities of Leicester, 1795 to 1811. On the southeast side of this parish is Mill Hill, the name originating from a post mill which formerly stood upon its summit, of which there are still some traces left. Mill Hill was formerly famous for fairy rings and fairy dances. Hand in hand we'll dance around, because this place is fairy ground. About which some old people in the neighbourhood tell many wonderful traditionary tales to this day. So there you are, folks. Stoney Stanton, famous for its quarries and for Stoney Cove, the diving centre. But you now know a bit of folklore that's buried just beneath the surface. You know of the phantom of Scholars Bridge over that unassuming little brook that haunts the people of Sapcut and Stoney Stanton when they travel between the two at night. And you know about Mill Hill, here behind Stoney Cove. Fairies live here, but not the little fairies with wings. No. These are the proper fae folk. These are the ones that will steal you away, that will steal your babies away and replace them with changelings. These are the ones that will whisk you off to the land of the fae folk, the fairy realm, and keep you there for many hundreds of years, where time passes so slowly for you, but you return back and life has changed. Everyone you knew and loved has gone. I'm going to come to the end of this lane now, and I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, for listening to me talk about my favourite subject, folklore, and for liking, subscribing and dinging that bell notification. It means an awful lot. Until the next time, Folklore Founders, I'll see you then.